it's kind of a nickname that goes back into my teens, really. It's kind of a nerd at school, bit of a know-it-all. So it kind of came about through that as a sort of reference to the professor from Back to the Future, you know. But I mean, when I started battling, I just thought I'd use the nickname and flip it. But to be honest, I've never really been a fan of the name. But I always believe like you just shouldn't choose your own name, because it always come out pretentious. That's the way I see it. So I just stick with it. I guess it's always just sort of hung around. I didn't think it would stick, but it did. Well, it's where my parents are from, both southeast. My mum's Lewisham, my dad was Croydon and Bromley. He was born in Bromley and grew up around Croydon and Beckenham. So he was a Palace fan. Older brother is from there as well, it's Palace. So it's a family thing, really. I just inherited them. And growing up in Kilburn, I suppose my local team would have been QPR. I did go there once. There was the first game I went to was QPR Liverpool when I was 10. But I just wasn't feeling them.
Yeah.
I didn't have any friends who supported them. I didn't have any family who supported them. So the first time I went Palace, it just felt right. So I just kind of stuck with it. But I didn't really boast about it until, I don't know, probably like 10 years ago. I was always just kept it quiet because it was just always a bit rubbish. It's amazing, man. Like, I've been to most of the grounds in the UK, and it's easy for a fan to say that their club's atmosphere is the best, but I think if you ask fans of a lot of other clubs, they'll say the same thing. They'll say Palace was the most atmospheric place they went to, because everyone's away fans are loud, but home fans, a lot of the stadiums quite quiet. And I think we're always loud, you know. In the lower Holmesdale's always singing whether we're winning, losing. It's always the same. I don't see that anywhere else. In the current squad, I mean, it's cliche because he's even my kid's favourite player, but it's hard to look past Zaha because of his affiliation with the club, watching him grow, knowing he was a special talent even before he was fully formed, and then seeing him grow into what he is now, which is, in my opinion, one of the best players in his position in the Premier League and one of the best in Europe, although I think because he plays for an unfashionable team, the rest of the world really is yet to catch on. When I see pundits and journalists talking about him, they always say the same thing. Oh, he's got no end product, or he's just like a bag of tricks and nothing else. But they don't watch him regularly. If you watch him regularly, you know he's up there with some of the very, very best. But yeah, it's just got that red and blue on. So if it's not Barcelona, like, people don't really care. Of all time is a harder question, but I'd say it's probably a toss-up between three players that all played in the same team that I started watching as a little kid. The sort of 89, 90, 91, those seasons there. The goalkeeper, Nigel Martin, I always loved, I always thought he was amazing. John Solarco on the wing, who was he was mad skillful, people forget. And also he, like, you know, before my time, like, my dad would tell me about like Peter Taylor. We always had sick wingers. That was like the Palace thing. Vince Hilaire. And for my era, John Solarco was just so dope. Like, he just pulled crosses out from nowhere from the byline, you know, just getting behind defenders and setting up enough goals for Wright and Bright, and then the others probably Ian Wright, even though, you know, he probably was more well known for playing at Arsenal. He was amazing for us, man, and he was so unorthodox. I've never really seen a player like him since, really. Got into the game so late, so he just kind of taught himself. He's had a unique style. So there's a toss-up between them three, I reckon. It's so hard to say well we'll finish at this stage, because the business that's going on is insane.
Yeah.
You know, every day I'll check the updates on transfers and stuff, and the money that the big clubs are spending is kind of, I mean, it's fantasy football, isn't it? It's like, it's an absolute joke. So, you know, we can never keep up with that. However, it's been proven over the past few seasons that the money can't actually buy you everything. You know, it's all well and good buying 6-7 new world-class players, but you still got to, you know, integrate them into your squad and get everybody motivated and firing on all cylinders. Do you know what I mean? And you know, I think a lot of people were probably surprised last season by how poorly Arsenal did. Do you know what I mean? Like Man United didn't really like pull up any trees. Man City were okay. You know, Chelsea ran away with it, and the season before that, even more surprising, Leicester winning the title. So anything's possible, but it feels like there's a hierarchy of power that's building at the moment in the Premier League that's quite clear. You know, with City and Arsenal and Spurs and Chelsea and you know, these teams are going to be really tough to catch. That said, there's no reason we can't finish around 10th. I don't think there's any reason, because underneath the top sort of 6 or 7, you know, you just got Everton sitting there like just on their own. They'll probably be better this season with some of the signings they've made. But after that, I think it's a free-for-all. I don't think there's anyone under there that we should be scared of. And we've started playing better against the bigger teams as well. So if we can keep that going under new management, then we've got every chance of finishing in the top 10. Yeah, which means now we'll probably get relegated. I've been here since 2002, so 15 years. Okay. And before that, I was in Willesden, Kilburn before that. So I was always in North London, and sort of moved. Some people call it East London, but it's just sort of north. Really, it's like northeast a little bit. So it's not that different. But I like it here. It's lively, and you know, a few years ago they finished the overground train that goes like straight from Dalston to Norwood Junction. Okay. No changes. You just sit there. So it's quite mad. Like when you get on it on match day, you can see all the exiled Palace fans like along the way. Like every stop you go on, there's like one more and then a couple more and then a couple more and a couple more. You know what I mean? So I know I'm not the only one, because there's Eagles everywhere. Yeah, I mean, like Willesden is like, I guess, slightly more suburban, so it was quite quiet, and it had elements of edge to it as well. Just because of the nature of some of the areas around it, I guess, like Harlesden and Neasden and South Kilburn, and there was always something going on in that respect, that you could wind up getting involved in the wrong ways if you weren't careful. But no, I look back on my Willesden days very, very happily, man. I had a good childhood and a hell of a lot of fun, you know. But yeah, I never met another Palace fan in that entire period that I was there, apart from the ones in my family. Well, it's hit us all very hard, especially in this house, because my wife taught him at the primary school she used to work at, so she knows the family well, and you know, that family's had a lot of difficulties over the years, you know, and no matter what anybody has done, you know, we don't believe in corporal punishment in this country, so nobody deserves to die for whatever they've done. You know, whatever they're involved in, no matter how negative you may see it, there's no judge and jury in this country that says someone should die for anything that they've done. So I don't want to comment too much on the incident itself, because I still don't know enough, and there's still not enough information released to say for sure exactly what happened. Even if you watch the video, it's not 100% clear. So I don't want to go on any particular side and start ranting and raving about stuff without the correct information. But one thing I can say for certain is that the loss of another young dude and someone who is connected to us here is massively upsetting, whichever way you chop it up. So before we get into like the politics of it or the scandal of it or police brutality or anything like that, the first thing is just having a thought for how the rest of Rashawn's family feels right now. I think that's the most important thing. Until we got more information, I'm not tearing down the front of a shop or throwing stuff at the police, because I don't know enough to be able to do that with any confidence. And I don't see how it helps the family right now. Oh man, I mean, it's a tough time to grow up, and I've got kids myself. You know, we're living through a period of intense austerity where wherein the money that may have formerly been around, that could have been there to benefit young people and families, you know, money for education, out of school activities, health, all of these things, they've been stripped back so dramatically that now it's like, if you're growing up now, if you're primary age or secondary school age, it is easy to feel like, well, obviously no one cares about us, because look at where they're taking all the money from, and look at what they're putting it into. It's not for us. So it's easy to get, I guess, a feeling of disenfranchisement, or a feeling like there's no point in being involved, there's no point in working hard. But at the same time, it's also an interesting period of opportunity for young people, because of the way the world has changed. Like, access to things that young people might be interested in, it's right there, and it doesn't necessarily cost anything because of the nature of how technology's changed and whatnot. If you're into photography, filmmaking, anything creative, music, there is no excuse really. Like, oh, you live in a rough area, you haven't got that much money. There's no excuse for not at least having a try. Do you know what I'm saying? And you never know where that might lead. So I guess it's a case of trying to remain optimistic in what is quite a negative period of modern history for the UK. Do you know what I mean? Oh man, well, you know, I suppose leading on from that last question, I grew up in a period that was similar to this. It was very similar. You had a very aggressive conservative government who were pulling money and making cuts from all of these things that I just discussed. So it was very similar for me growing up, but we always had that thing instilled by our parents of like, you just gotta work twice as hard as everybody else. So we kind of just had that in us. And also we were just constantly around a lot of interesting people. Like, my parents were quite politicized, and there was you know, there was a lot of marches, there was a lot of hippies, there was a lot of like alternative people around our flat and where we lived, and like our friends and extended family and stuff. And my parents were around a lot of interesting people, and I think me and my brother and sister very much kind of soaked that up and became creative quite naturally. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like a thing of, oh, I'm gonna be a television celebrity, or I'm gonna be a famous writer, or I'm gonna be like the dopest rapper. It was more just like, it felt natural to write stuff down and tell stories. And that's how we all ended up being creative for a living. Moving on, I suppose, yeah, like I touched on it already, like as a teenager, started getting into rap, and then specifically into battle rap, and then like set up like a night with some friends. We ran a record store in Carnaby Street. We used to have like little live events in there every Friday, and that's how I sort of became known as a bit of a personality of rap, I guess, like a kind of a host, because I used to host those nights, and it was, you know, it'd get pretty rowdy in there, but I'd always sort of maintain the peace by just sort of, I guess, just being friendly and being humorous, and also letting people know, like, don't fuck with me though, because I can rap, like, and like if I have to destroy you in front of your boys, then it's going to be embarrassing for you. So like, I sort of made a name for myself doing that. And then like I met Mark Ronson down there, joined his band, toured with them for a couple years, and then had my first daughter and started thinking about settling down and getting a proper job. And that was around the time when I got contacted by the BBC to come and work with Lenny Henry on this comedy series that he was working on. And that sort of just changed everything. That introduced me to comedy, that introduced me to the world of stand-up, started doing stand-up and mixing it with rap. And then that led into getting cast in certain programs and started acting, you know, created like a children's show for CBBC as like a hip-hop musical. And that got me my start as a writer and working in the production of television. And, you know, all of that had happened by sort of 2010. So the last 7 years, it's just been building making sure I can just keep on working and feeding the kids. And you know, that's why people say, oh, you do so many different, how do you do all these different things? Or like, why don't you just pick one thing? And it's because I can't afford to. Like I need to make money as many ways as possible, because being in one program on TV is not gonna feed you, even you, let alone your family, for like years. The nature of show business is that there's a lot of people doing it, and the people who make the most and are the most successful are the ones that are like bankable household names. And if you're not one of them, like if you're not like Tom Hardy or something, then you just gotta keep grafting. But at the same time, you don't want to do rubbish stuff. So I don't want to be on lame TV shows, rubbish comedy shows. I don't want to do crap gigs. I only want to do the stuff that I enjoy, which means there's even less work for me. So that's why I just like, if nothing's popping off in comedy that I want to do right now, then I'll go into my writing. If someone's interested in paying me to write for something, I'll do that. Do you know what I'm saying? If the rap thing's working, I'll do that. You know what I mean? So it's more like, it's less like, oh, I want to be the king of everything. I just want to work. You know, I don't want to be sat around.